TMS fam, welcome back. Thank you for staying with us. Now, a lot of South Africans are really just struggling to cope with the high cost of living. While many are turning to debt to make ends meet, we saw earlier on how some people are turning to loan sharks. Others are committing insurance fraud. This is just as an easy way to raise some cash. Let's speak now to Garth de Klerk, who is the CEO of the Insurance Crime Bureau. Garth, thank you so much for your time. I mean, just this introduction is so scary to think that times are so difficult that people will turn to insurance fraud. What's the latest that you're seeing? How has the latest cost of living impacted on the rates of fraud, insurance fraud in the country?
Good morning, and thank you very much for having me first.
Thank you, it's a pleasure.
So let's talk about the trends. Really, we are seeing economic desperation like we haven't seen in 40, 50 years. You know, times are really tough, and it's not only South Africa. Across the international environment as well, we are seeing economic pressure that we haven't seen some cases post-war. People are desperate. The middle class has indebted themselves in South Africa. We are seeing highest interest rates that we've seen in a number of years. In international markets, they're seeing interest rates of 4-5%, which is just not normal for them. So for them, this is an absolute desperation. I'm now faced with a position where I can no longer feed my family, I can no longer pay for education of my children, so I'm going to turn to crime to finance my lifestyle. And you talk about insurance fraud. It's not just fraud. Fraud in South Africa is a contact sport. We are seeing a lot of ethical crimes related to that fraud. And that's where the problem comes in.
Sure. And then when you're looking at the people that are committing all of these crimes, what would you say is that criteria? Are we looking at young adults? Are we looking, because you did speak about the middle class, but who exactly is committing these kinds of crimes?
That's becoming more difficult to profile. So as the economic stress moves up into the middle class, as I referred to earlier, your profile of criminal is changing.
Yeah.
So in the past, you could clearly identify, you know, a criminal would look like this, act like that, think like this.
Yeah.
Now you're seeing, because of the economic desperation, they're bringing in what we call opportunistic criminals, desperate criminals, poverty-driven criminals. So your profile is changing. We are seeing individuals who were previously economically active but stable now being forced into other means of financing their debt. As you said, over-indebtedness, turning to loan sharks, turning to financial products in order to survive.
And what are some of, I mean, you were speaking about trends earlier on, but what are some of the stories that you're finding you have to deal with? I mean, you know, a lot of us will be familiar with the story of Rosemary Ndlovu, for instance, you know, which is probably, you know, one of the worst that a lot of us have heard. But what are some of the stories or some of the cases that you've had to deal with?
So let's start off by saying Rosemary Ndlovu was not a unique case. There are other cases out there like that. People are prepared to murder for money, and we have to be aware of that. We can't ignore the reality. We are seeing other cases where, you know, people are selling their vehicles to a syndicate, then faking a hijacking, claiming from insurance, settling their debt, and they sit with the syndicate cash as a payment or an inducement in order to do that. So people are really sitting down over their family tables or over a bra and looking for different ways to make cash. These days, the average cell phone claim is almost as much, if not more in some cases, as the average motor claim. Remember, a cell phone these days can cost 20,000, 30,000 rand.
Yeah.
So if I lose my cell phone, which is relatively simple in people's minds, I can claim quite a nice amount.
And there's what now, what's called money mules. What is that? Talk to us about that particular concept.
So money mules is where I would come to you and say, use your bank account to move my illicit funds. You know, we don't all have big couches where we can stick funds. So we have to put them through the financial services sector. I would need a clean account to move my money through the financial services industry to launder that money. Right. So I'll come to you and say, listen, I'll pay you 5,000 Rand. I'm going to move 10 or 20 or 30,000 Rand through your account, and I'll do that with multiple individuals. You become a money mule per se. I'm the money launderer. And we get a lot of those people again. If I'm paying you 5 grand to do nothing, you can go open a new bank account. In your mind, it's untraceable, but we always catch the people.
Sure. So there's a lot of work that you are having to deal with now, particularly with the economic crisis that we're seeing in our country. So who can get a hold of you, or who do you usually give your help to? If I think there's something happening in my account, am I able to contact you, Garth?
Yeah, so there's a number of touch points, and you can either contact, if it's insurance fraud or crime, you can contact the South African Insurance Crime Bureau at sircb.co.za.
Right.
If you're looking at things like scams or fraud online, you can use YIMA, which is yima.org.za rather.
Yeah.
And SAFPS as well, which are our partners in fraud prevention, so the South African Fraud Prevention Services, if your ID has been compromised or you feel that your ID has been compromised. So there's a lot of private touch points. The best thing is pick up the phone. There's a number of fraud lines on those various websites where you can pick up the phone, make a complaint, and allow us to take a look at it.
Garth, thank you so much for your time and for the work that you do for all of us here in South Africa. That was Garth de Klerk, the CEO of the Insurance Crime Bureau, speaking to us this morning about some of the things and some of the crimes that really people are turning to in order to make ends meet, particularly with the high cost of living that a lot of us are facing